Kia ora, hello, I'm Philip Duncan. Thank you for joining us for our Tuesday weather update, recorded on the 28th of January. Well, we've still got more changeable weather coming through, but perhaps not quite as dramatic as some of that weather we saw over the weekend. It was windy, warm. We had those thunderstorms, downpours, and obviously that tornado up around Northland and northern parts of Auckland. Now we're seeing high pressure moving across New Zealand. Things are a lot more settled, although certainly was a cooler morning over the last couple of mornings around many parts of the country as that warm northerly disappeared and a southerly flow moved in. Now we're seeing the warm nor'westers return. Someone I was in a meeting with this morning nailed it, saying how we kicked off summer feeling spring-like, and now in the middle part of summer it's feeling autumn-like. This is sort of what we see in autumn and spring, these sort of changeable wind directions where one day it's a southerly and it feels cooler, next day it's a windier nor'wester and the temperatures go up. Australia's no different. Southerlies coming all through the southern parts at the moment. You know, daytime highs are not that flash. Melbourne's got a high of about 19 degrees tomorrow and Dunedin's around about 16 or so in the next couple of days. So certainly not a lot of warm weather or hot weather in the southern parts of both Australia and New Zealand. And that weather pattern is sort of with us for a wee bit longer. But as you're going to see in this video, maybe the energy now is shifting up to the tropics. We'll talk about that in a moment. Let's kick off with the Wednesday forecast. So high pressure over the top of New Zealand. Winds are finally light in Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula, Northland, Bay of Plenty. Won't be very windy, mostly dry, maybe an isolated shower, but not much up there. Windier nor'westers further down the country. That boosts up the temperatures along the eastern side, and that windy weather goes into the South Island. But that southerly flow that was coming into Australia for today, this is it here, coming into the South Island for Wednesday. There's a little bit of wet weather moving up the west coast as well, but it's trapped between high pressure over the North Island and high pressure exiting Australia, which means by Thursday, that wet weather kind of gets trapped in between two sets of high pressure at either end of New Zealand. So central parts of the country, maybe in particular the lower part of the North Island on the western side, perhaps more likely to see some showers or patchy rain around. So let's have a look at the rainfall for the next couple of days. This is from 9 o'clock tonight through until 9 o'clock on Thursday. Most of that heavy rain over on the west coast. It's not overly heavy once you get north of Westland and you're going further up into the North Island. Certainly you're not seeing big rainfall totals, but could be some heavier falls, 30 millimetres or so. I'm sure that'll actually be quite welcomed by a number of people. And there won't be much in the north of the North Island, just a couple of showers that could form. All right, let's go into Friday. So high pressure is still around. It is now mostly east of New Zealand, over the Chatham Islands. We do have a few showers coming in, still lingering in that same central part of the country. But this is all high pressure around New Zealand and also out south of Australia. There's a small bit of low pressure off the coast of New South Wales, but mostly the energy for low pressure is developing up here into the tropics from about sort of Samoa over towards Queensland. Those are the areas that we're seeing low pressure. And then we do expect that low pressure to go further out over towards northern parts of Western Australia. So what does that mean? Well, for now, it doesn't mean a great deal for New Zealand, but it's very much worth keeping an eye on because all it takes is for a low pressure zone like this one here near Tonga to drop directly towards us. And next thing you know, we've got a tropical rain event on the way. Over here in the Coral Sea, this low pressure zone near Vanuatu may well become a tropical cyclone. It isn't locked in, but it is showing up in some of the longer range models. Worth keeping an eye on. The Coral Sea, well-known breeding ground for tropical storms. But around New Zealand on Saturday, we've got some showers or rain around the western side of the South Island. A little bit might spill over further into the east, but Canterbury does look fairly dry over the next couple of weeks ahead, as does the top half of the North Island. So that makes up for the rain, at least that Canterbury got over the weekend. Some very heavy, widespread rain. Not seeing quite so much in the way of widespread rain here this weekend. Just a few showers are in the mix. Although you never know, they can turn heavy and thundery. But while we've got these low pressure zones forming up here in the tropics, for them to come down to New Zealand, we need to remove the high pressure zones like this one in the Tasman Sea, or they need to drop further southwards. And until that happens, the high pressure zones act like a bit of an invisible wall and it keeps a lot of that weather northwards. And that's what we see at the start of next week. High pressure quite strong coming into the New Zealand area. We've got a slight easterly flow at the top of the North Island, brings in a couple of showers. It is mostly dry though, and perhaps a bit of a west to southwest flow at the southern end of the country. So if this low in the Coral Sea does form into a cyclone, it's not likely based on this modelling for it to come down to New Zealand because this high is in the way. But if the high zips along quickly to the east. That will allow that low to drop down behind it. So we'll be keeping a close eye on the tropics going into February. We're going into the peak of the cyclone season over February and March. That's typically, historically, the busiest time of the year. Sea temperatures are at their highest as we go into March, and that's a good recipe for bubbling up tropical lows. But the Southern Ocean is still busy, but not quite as stormy as it was perhaps over the last couple of weeks. All right, that's all from me for today. Back again tomorrow, Wednesday. We'll have another look at what is going on in the tropics. We will catch you then.